3CR Radiothon 2024. Sound on for solidarity.
Coming up is a podcast brought to you by the dedicated and diverse volunteers at 3CR. Just a quick message before you get there. For the month of June, we're asking listeners to donate to the station to help us keep going. We rely on the generous donations of community to survive. Go to 3cr.org.au/donate and show your support for community-owned and community-run media. Thanks for your support and happy listening.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English-language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Palestine Remembered. A special shout out to everyone that has been listening and sharing the podcast. Our new listeners, thank you so very much for joining us. Those that are new to Palestine and advocacy for the fight for justice for the Palestinians, thanks for listening to the show. As we keep saying, share the podcast, tell your friends, get along to a rally, sign a petition, do your bit for Palestine. Last week at the rally, I spoke about the importance of 3CR, about giving a voice to voiceless people, but also the long and storied history of 3CR and its support for Palestine way back into the 70s, the very first show. Back in 1976, a national campaign was run against that show. 3CR was called Terrorist Radio. The Bulletin, for those old enough to remember that weekly magazine, ran a cover with a hooded person, presumably, an Orientalist image, an image to dehumanize Arab resistance, Palestinian resistance of quote-unquote a terrorist. Terror Radio was the headline. So for 50 years, 3CR has stood at the forefront of giving Palestinians a voice, but not just Palestinians, many voiceless communities, from new immigrants to Australia through to people on this continent who rightfully should have a voice, rightfully should be at the forefront of everything from legislation through to care for country, etc., our black brothers and sisters. So next week is Radiothon. It's so very important. My magnificent executive producer, I've promoted her, Giselle Hanna, who does a show just before me, has been volunteering her time, Michele, Gabrielle, Juliet, so many of the crew in 3CR. There's only a few paid staff. We run on the smell of an oily rag. The rest of us are volunteers. So next week is Radiothon. Yusuf and Robert will be joining me in the show. We'll be taking some calls, but make sure you call in with your donations and please support 3CR. This week, another horrible week in Palestine, 245 days. We are now 245 days of ongoing genocide, of brutality, of disgust. I was interviewed during the week by TRT, and they asked me a general question about sentiment. So I said, I broke it down into thirds, but I don't imagine the percentages are exactly 1/3 each. But there's a chunk of me that is sad and in pain for the loss of Palestine, for the death and destruction in Palestine, for the murder of Palestinians. There's pain for their suffering. There's pain, my own personal suffering. But there's a pain for humanity. The pain for humanity that can allow this to go on, can watch this live digital genocide, can watch barbarity as has not been seen. This is not unique, what Israel is doing. This is settler colonialism manifest. Exactly what happened on this continent. It's what happened in Belgium, where 10 million, in Congo, where 10 million Congolese were killed by King Leopold. It's what's happening today in West Papua, in Kanaki, where, the other side of the world, France still believes that, quote-unquote, New Caledonia, so-called New Caledonia, is part of France. What we're seeing is exactly what those settler colonial ideologies did here in Aotearoa, Turtle Island, right throughout the Pacific. So what I'm painting for, what's hurting, is the world that we're giving our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and whoever, that is allowing this genocide to occur, allowing, the Israel can only do what it does because of the impunity and the normalcy that the West confers on Israel. Can only do it that way. The world reacted in unanimity against Russia's invasion into the Ukraine. Everything happened. Diplomatic lines were cut, sanctions, assets were frozen. Russia lost its SWIFT code. And if you've ever tried to transfer money somewhere, you need a SWIFT code. Well, the international remittances to Russia turned into zero overnight. There are a suite of things that can be done, that the West can do, to remove the legitimacy that Israel enjoys, the impunity it enjoys, that allows it to do what it's doing. So the last chunk of that hurt is for the world that is going about its life normally, going about its life, going to the shops, going to the footy, having a beer with Duncan because Duncan's my mate, just living a normal life whilst we see Israel dropping 2-ton bombs onto tent cities into an area that's supposed to be protected, an area that's supposed to offer respite, an area where Palestinians have been dislocated 3, 4, 5 times throughout the past 8 months. 8 months have found or attempted to find some sort of safety. With all that going on now, Parliament found time to condemn. They found time to condemn. They found time to condemn the Greens in what is I would think, when history goes back and judges Australia's response to the genocide, this will be a day of infamy, where the Labor Party and the Liberal Party were able, in a series of, one must suggest there's an element of coordination, worked out that in the breakdown in social cohesion, the sickening rise in anti-Palestinian racism, the increase in anti-Semitism is all because of the Greens. We spent the best part of 2 days, and the rag, the Australian, continues to be more right-wing than the Jerusalem Post, dedicating thousands of words to the Greens and that their party is an anti-Semitic party, that their just and moral position on Palestine, their just and moral position on Palestine is just about, quote-unquote, harvesting votes. It's shameful. Adam Bant and the Greens have been clear. They condemn anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian racism, and the genocide. Albo has condemned the Greens just as he condemned the Yemenis. He has yet to condemn Israel. He has yet to condemn the genocide, and it's shameful. They dug up that living corpse, a former Prime Minister and should-be war criminal, should be sitting in The Hague with his buddies Bush and Blair, John Howard, who dog-whistled and allowed for a space for Pauline Hanson and her vile agenda to be part of our parliament. They dug him up and said, he said the Labor Party should be preferencing the Greens last. just shameful, the division within our politics that has got its roots in this current situation, in the breakdown of our social cohesion back to October 8th, when parliaments and governments all over the continent decided to light up monuments to commemorate the loss of Israeli lives. In a moment of elevating the suffering of one and diminishing the suffering of another, excluding a population of people from their opportunity to participate in our society. It was not easy, it was not comfortable, and for many, they did not identify as Palestinian on October 6th. On October 6th and beforehand. The conflicted, the elevated, the manufactured, the screen of anti-Semitism, which is vile. And if you want to see what that looks like, you only have to look at the anti-Palestinian racism that occurred in Doncaster at an Australian woman of Greek ancestry, not Arab, not Muslim, of Greek ancestry. She woke up in the morning to some vile words written on her footpath and swastikas. We tell our Jewish brothers and sisters that the same people that hate them hate us, and that together the only way we can combat them, anti-Semites, is to fight them together. That their fight against anti-Semitism is our fight against anti-Palestinian racism, against all hate, all misogyny, homophobia, patriarchy. All of it is intertwined and interlinked. But the elevation of the suffering of one over the suffering of the common is what creates this division. There has been one article, as I've seen so far today in the mainstream media, a couple of other little mentions, just like the bomb that was put on front of Theo's house in Botany Bay in January. Scant mention so far. One tweet from the member for Menzies, not mentioning at all anti-Palestinian racism, but only talking about Islamophobia. Anti-Palestinian racism is real. It's separate to Islamophobia. Not all supporters of Palestine are Muslim. My friends, we're going to go to a couple of community announcements and then a recording of a speech I did at Melbourne University on the 8 types of Palestinians. I'm in Perth this weekend. I'll be at the rally today, speaking to some leaders tomorrow, a public forum on Monday, and then on Tuesday night, Australia versus Palestine, an Asian Cup qualifier. Looking forward to that. Thanks for listening. Share the podcast. Tell your friends. Remember, there's never been a better time for a free Palestine. And join Robert, Yusuf and I next week for Radiothon.
Sound on for solidarity.
3CR Radiothon fundraiser, June 2024.
To donate, call 039419 8377 or donate online at 3cr.org.au.
3CR Radiothon 2024.
Sound on for solidarity.
We have a right to be in public space, undertaking political activity. That is not something that people should be telling us that we can't do.
Multiple actions rolling over months and years and create huge sustained pressure of social change.
And what we're seeing around the country right now is increasing repression of protest.
Protest works. That's why I think we're seeing it criminalised all over the place.
3CR. Stay tuned, stay radical.
To be Palestinian is to be anything. Muslim, Christian, Jew, Samaritan, agnostic, atheist, McDonald's hamburger eater. Anyone can be Palestinian. The cruelty that is happening in Gaza doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when the world closes its eyes, as it has, because Israel is normal. Israel craves normalcy. Look at us at Eurovision. We've got actors and actresses. It is not a normal joint. It is a settler, racist, ethno-nationalist country embedded in every bit of white supremacism and hate that can manifest itself. But it can be better. Like every country, it can be better, and it's our duty to make it better. It is an apartheid state. There are 8 types of Palestinians. 8 types of Palestinians, and in any world where there is more than one type of human being, that's a f***ing problem. If there's 8 times, that's a huge problem. It might not surprise you, but I'm the best of those. I say I'm the best of those. I'm actually the least connected of those too. As the best of those, what that means is I'm Western educated, Western assimilated, Western passport holder. I look like them, but I sound like us. It's a real disconnect for some white racists when I tell them that. But I'm most disconnected. My passport can't be stripped of me, but I've had the opportunity to live the great Australian dream. My fridge is full. I get to travel with an Australian passport. And, sounding like us makes it a bit easier for me to get a job. The second type of Palestinian is a 48 Palestinian. We call them 48ers. The Israelis call us Israeli Arabs. They're citizens of the state of Israel, so they've got a passport. But there are over 50 laws that determine that they're not first class. They get to vote, but they can't live in certain communities because they don't meet the cultural and social construct of that society because they're not Jewish. And there's ways and means that they work out, because Dana is a name that could go either way. It's a Semitic name. Nasser, not so much. Muhammad, not so much. But Dana certainly is one. And so if Dana went to live in one of these communities, they might say, geez, we're not really sure if Dana is one of us or one of them. Because most Israeli Jews actually look like us. They're, Semitic, Arab, African-looking people. Like there are Scarlett Johansson types, Benjamin Netanyahu types, and no Palestinian denies Jewish connection to Palestine. We don't deny Jewish connection. We don't accept that it's superior. Nor do we accept that ours is superior. We accept that there's only one type of human on this precious earth, and we are all equal. And that anybody thinks they're better than somebody else. The problem's with them, not with this person. That if you're a 48 Palestinian, Dana goes to the admissions committee to live in a community. Can you imagine an admissions committee? So Dana, when did you serve in the IDF? What was your years of service? I didn't serve in the IDF. Oh, were you injured? No, I wasn't injured. No worries, we'll get back to you, Dana. That was a quick interview. So she can't live in that community, but she's number 2 Palestinian. She's got a passport, she's a citizen, she gets to vote. The 2018 nation state law says, Dana, the state of Israel is for Jewish self-determination and Jewish self-determination alone. You want to make sure you understand you don't belong. She's a number 2 Palestinian, not quite a number 1. A number 3 Palestinian is a Palestinian that lives in East Jerusalem. They're not a citizen. They've got a Jerusalem ID, which means that they can live in Jerusalem, but at any time they have to prove that Jerusalem is the centre of their life. Now, as Dana told you, we're the most educated people in the world because we can't buy houses or land or anything, so we might as well spend that money on education. And so our brilliant young women and boys travel the world and, just really uplift us and shine an example of what Palestine could be if you let us be free. And so Dana comes to Australia and she does her masters here, and her tutors go, "You're a superstar, Dana. I've organised a PhD for you." She gets a PhD, does a couple of years of consulting, and then goes back to Jerusalem. And then she gets a call from the Civil Administrative Authority and says, "So Dana, what we want to do is just make sure that you've fulfilled your obligations under an East Jerusalem ID, and we want to prove that Jerusalem is the centre of your life." And so Dana says, "I was born in 1985. I went to Jerusalem Primary School." And they go, No. The past 10 years. Yeah, after Jerusalem Primary School, I went to Jerusalem High. The past 10 years. Okay, well, I've just come back. I did 3 years with Accenture in a consulting thing, and I did my PhD and my Masters at Melbourne University. And I go, okay, so for the past 10 years, you've spent 8 years in Australia. Yeah. So Jerusalem hasn't been the centre of your life for the past 10 years. Residency revoked. Tens of thousands of Palestinian Jerusalemites have had their residency revoked. Millennia attachment to the land. Number 3 Palestinian. Number 4 Palestinian is a Palestinian who lives in the West Bank. They weren't part of the 1948 catastrophe, Nakba, or ethnic cleansing of Palestine, and they live in an ancestral piece of dirt that they've got connection to, and were never part of it. They're not citizens, they don't get to vote, they're under Israeli military law. Their kid gets snatched up and held in administrative detention for 6 months at a time for throwing a stone at a tank, or perhaps just walking to their sister's house to get dinner. Questioned in a foreign language, made to sign a confession in a language they don't understand, with no parent, no advocate present, tried in a military court by a judge who's a settler, 2 years, 99.9% conviction rate, because CSI works brilliantly in the military courts of Israel. Number 4, Pala. And number 5 Palestinian is a Palestinian who was ethnically cleansed in the demographic engineering that created a Jewish majority state in a land where there was a Jewish minority, like my father, driven out of their homes after massacres at the end of a bayonet, and ended up refugees inside historical Palestine from the river to the sea, but they're refugees. So they own no land, they live in refugee camps for now 75 years, they have no opportunity to vote, their kids get taken away, etc., but they, without the concept of land for rural people, they work itinerant jobs. Number 5 Palo. Number 6 Palestinian is a Palestinian that was ethnically cleansed outside of historic Palestine and lives in a collar country. Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, perhaps in the past Iraq. And those Palestinians that might have gone there with a little bit of money, maybe a bit of gold, maybe married well, and might have become citizens of those countries and have got a passport. And so they've had the benefit of being perhaps able to travel, maybe get a better job, etc. And that's a number 6 Palestinian. Number 7 Palestinian. Number 7 Palestinian is a Palestinian that was ethnically cleansed in 48, didn't make it into the West Bank, ended up in a collar country, but is a refugee. And is a refugee in one of those collar countries without citizenship, without paperwork, without the opportunity for job, is educated in an UNRWA unfunded school, is dependent on aid 75 years after they were thrown out of their home. A number 8 Palestinian is the Palestinian we see today who stands steadfast, unbroken in Gaza, who has suffered under the most brutal of racist attack that anyone could imagine. When unrestrained evil and unrestrained racism and unrestrained support manifest itself in one spot. It's like concentrating the sun's light with a magnifying glass on an ant. That's what Gaza is today. An apocalypse. That's a number 8 Palestinian. And if anyone tells you in the world that a person can have 8 different identities, and those 8 different identities are controlled by one body, and that one body doesn't give them the opportunity to vote, doesn't give them proportional representation, doesn't allow them to be free. There's only one word for that, and it's apartheid. And we know what that means when South Africans tell you, when Nelson Mandela, Archbishop Desmond Tutu tells you, we know what that means we need to do. It means when we see a genocide happening, genocide isn't just the extinguishing of populations, it's the extinguishing of culture. It's the extinguishing of connection to the land. They've destroyed every library, every tertiary institution, every secondary institution. There's not a hospital that works. In 1948, the Nakba that forced so many Palestinians out was driven at the end of a bayonet. And I say that often. At least that was, I heard somebody say, there was a little bit of honour in that. Somebody might have resisted and died. But what the ethnic cleansing of Gaza is a grenade. They've rolled in a grenade. Gaza is going to be uninhabitable for a generation, perhaps 2. And where are those kids going to be educated? And where are their families going to be when those kids are getting educated? They're not going to be in Gaza. And if you were a refugee in Gaza, living in a refugee camp for 75 years with no connection to the dirt other than being less than a day's walk to where your grandmother is buried, but that fence denies you that. Your religion denies you that, aided and abetted by a Western imperialistic system that says they're right, they belong, they're normal, you don't. Why would you go there? This is a 10 or 15 year delayed onset ethnic cleansing, and we cannot sit by and idly allow it to happen. This is a calculated and vindictive plan to move Gaza to somewhere else. Be under no illusion. There is one side, and it's a shared humanity. If you can't sign on to shared humanity, that's okay. Just don't expect for us to want you to be on the bus with us. Because tomorrow is going to exist. A tomorrow where we'll all live together as equals will happen. The arc of moral justice does pivot back to the right world. And when that happens, and you know, I say this a couple of times, most recently to a trades hall, I've met a lot of South Africans. My professional business was in property and finance, and I met a lot of South Africans. And they had very thick Afrikaners voices. And every one of them was against apartheid. Every one of them. And it's fantastic. I'm so excited to meet these people that were against apartheid. And I say, when did you come to Australia? And they say 1997. And you go, straight after Mandela got out of jail. No, but I was against it. So why didn't you leave in 78, 79, 82, 85? Leave 94 if he gets out of jail in 95. At least then you do. But if you leave in 99, guess what? You were all for apartheid, but just not so happy when other people got to vote. There's going to be a lot of post-Palestine liberation Zionists who are always for Palestine. That's why we're taking receipts. Know that you're on the right side of history, you're in the right place. Don't let this blood go to waste, please. There's never been a more important and urgent time for you to connect. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Wanting Palestine to be free from the river to the sea is not anti-Semitism. Hate and racism is wanting only half the people to be free from the river to the sea. And that's Zionism, and that's the apartheid state of Israel. Thank you, everyone.
3CR Radiothon 2024. Sound on for solidarity.
Did you enjoy listening to that podcast? 3CR is a community radio station, and you, the listener, are a part of that community. Right now, it's our radiothon. We need you to pitch in with a few dollars to keep the station going. We can't do it without you. It's easy. Head to 3cr.org.au/donate. Your donations really matter.